Now, if you finish the exercise, you should have a function like this that returns the arguments that the user enters, and the main argument, or the only argument that it takes, is an argument for the target. Now, I went one step further and I called the function in here in my main program exactly the way that I called it in the Mac changer example when we did it in the previous section. So I just have a variable called options that will capture the value for options when getArguments is called. And then I'm passing options.target to my scan function, which is the function that does the scan and that takes an IP as an argument or as an input. So I ended up with a program that I can run like so. I can just do Python program name, which is network scanner, and then I can do -t or -- target, and after that I can give the IP that I want to scan. And in this example, I'm going to give a range 10.0.21/24 to scan my whole subnet. And as you can see, I'll get the results in here. Now this all works and it's all good. The only thing is the opt_parse module in here is deprecated. What we mean by deprecated is it still works. It even works with Python 3. But if the Python developers wanted to add new features, they're not going to add it to this module. They're going to add it to a different module that came after this. Now the reason why I showed this module is because I'm actually very used on using it, and I've been using it even before they created the new module. And since this still works, I'm just used to always use this. Now, I'm not the only programmer that does that. There are loads of programs and scripts online that still use the opt_parse. Hence why Python made sure that it still works even in Python 3. And hence why I taught it to you, because you might be looking at some code written by some other programmer and they might be using opt_parse. Now, if you want to use the successor of opt_parse, it's called argparse. And I'm going to include its manual in the resources of this lecture. But using it is actually very, very simple and very, very similar to using opt_parse. And you'll see why now. So in order to use argparse, instead of importing opt_parse, we're going to import argparse. And then when you're creating the parser here, instead of doing opt_parse, obviously we're going to say argparse, which is the name of our module. And instead of saying option parser, the name of the class in this case is called argument parser. Again, you can see the similarities, it's identical. The only thing we're doing is just changing the module name and the class name. Next, when you want to add an option, instead of saying .add_option, we're going to say .add_argument. Again, everything in here stays the same. We don't need to change any of that. And then in here, when we're calling parseArgs to parse the arguments, again, this is the same. We don't need to change any of that. The only difference is, in this case, it only returns the options. It doesn't return the arguments. So we can remove this in here and just return the options at the end. Now this code will work. So if we just go down and run it, again, as you can see, it's still working and it works exactly the same. The methods are still called exactly the same. The only difference is they're called different names. And again, the only difference between this module and the opt_parse is that opt_parse is deprecated. So whenever Python developers want to add new features, they're going to be adding it to argparse, not opt_parse. But opt_parse works with both Python 2 and even Python 3. So that's very important to note. The other note that I wanted to show in this lecture is using the whole script with Python 3. So argparse and opt_parse both work with Python 3, so that wouldn't be an issue. The issue would be with Scapy. Now, it's not really an issue, it's just that you need to install Scapy on the system, or on Kali to be specific, because it doesn't come pre-installed. So it comes pre-installed with Python 2.7, but it doesn't come pre-installed with Python 3. So this is a very good opportunity to me to show you how to install modules if they're not installed. So you can follow the method that I'm going to show you to install any module you want. It doesn't have to be Scapy. Now, in order to install Python modules, we use a command called pip. So you do pip install, and then you put the module name that you want to install. So in our case, it's called Scapy Python 3. So pip is a command that you use to install Python modules regardless of what module you want to install. So if you want to use a module in your program and this module doesn't come pre-installed with the operating system that you're using, then you can use pip to install the module that you want. We're using install to tell pip that I want to install something, because we can also use pip to do other stuff like removing modules. And finally, the module that we want to install is called Scapy Python 3. Now, this command will work to install modules for Python 2.7. If you want to install modules for Python 3, then you have to say pip 3. So it's the same way when we use Python, we actually use Python 2.7, and if we want to use Python 3, we type Python 3. Same goes when you want to install modules, you do pip 3. If you want to install modules on Python 3, you do pip if you want to install modules on Python. So I'm gonna hit enter, and this will tell me that Scapy is already installed on my system because I actually already installed it before recording this lecture. But if it's not installed on your system, then it'll install it for you. Now, once you have pip installed on Python 3, you can actually use our code exactly the same way it is. So the program that we wrote will work on both Python 2 and Python 3 by default. You actually don't need to modify anything. So if I just type Python 3 here to run my program with Python 3, you'll see that the program will work exactly the same way that it used to work with Python 2.7. So that's it for this lecture. I just wanted to give you 2 quick notes, and as we did this, we learned a few useful things.